Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sirhan on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States on the 7th of July, 2025. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 4th of July and a Memorial Day weekend. Now we'll get right down to it here real quick. Do apologize for the late delay because technical difficulties wanted to cease and persist out here in my part of town. So I went ahead and took care of it, and I am now live in action. Hope everyone has themselves a wonderful weekend. Hope for those of you were lighting up fireworks, your hands are still in place because that's the most important thing that you guys have right now. That is your hands. So, no, I don't shoot fireworks. My neighbors did. So I went ahead and watched them. If you want to know what happens with fireworks, look what happened to Jason Pierre-Paul of the Giants. That's all you need to know because I'm not going to take down that route. Let's go ahead and get right down to it here real quick. Of course, the big news out of here at Cincinnati is the big win by FC Cincinnati in soccer when they beat Chicago Fire FC 2-1. Once again, the standout Evander with 3 goals and the third straight game with a goal, 5 goals in the last 3 games, excuse me. Again, the MLS match day for his performance Saturday. Also, the assist to Kevin Denke for the what turned out to be the game-clinching goal in the 50th minute. The electric atmosphere sell out at TQL Stadium. They always do the job out there. Kudos to the those out there in Cincinnati, as well as the FCC fan base, especially up there in the Bailey, who is always just in their own world. But they uplift the players over there at TQL Stadium. As I said, forget about the Reds and the Bengals with the fan bases who don't know how to shut up to save their lives. The real fan base you want to talk about is TQL Stadium with FC Cincinnati fans, because when they pack the Bailey, they basically let their passion just ooze, and it rubs off to the players, and the players' passion for soccer oozes off to the fans over at TQL Stadium in Cincinnati. It was a stand-up game for them. Now they're in first place, in the position now for the Supporters Shield. Those are wondering what that is in Major League Soccer. That means you had enough to have the best record or the most points in Major League Soccer. They did that 2 years ago, and now they're in prime position to do it again. And I'm looking forward to seeing them continue on their ways. Maybe they are better than they were last season, but there's still, I think, work to be done just to get there. But still, they're in position for the Supporters Shield right now. They're doing the job. Pat Noonan, the head coach of FC Cincinnati, is just managing this game pretty well right now, and that's what you have over in Cincinnati. So shout out to the players and the coaches over there, especially the 25,000 plus that near filled the stadium over there. Job well done. Now to the world of the NFL, and this is maybe a bit of a shocker. It was the Giants and the Dolphins completing a trade, actually getting Darren Waller out of retirement, going from the Giants to Miami. Makes you wonder why Darren Waller sat out. The guy had all kinds of substance abuse problems with his time with the Las Vegas Raiders. Completed that. Kudos to him. But maybe it was because he didn't want to play for Brian Daboll, who's basically 2 years after his expiration date as a head coach of the New York Giants. Technically, he should have been fired. I don't know how he's not. But for the Dolphins, replaced Jonnu Smith with a particular tight end in Darren Waller. And basically, what we have here is a case of the Miami Dolphins losing a tight end, getting one back in terms of being able to replace him, an extra target, right, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. A lot of things have to be in consideration, obviously. But it's interesting they call him out of retirement. Maybe he retired because he didn't want to play for the Giants or Brian Daboll, which I understand it, simply because that's how they are. You know how the Giants organization has been over the last few years. Look at how they managed the offseason. I mean, you have the premier receiver in Malik Neighbors, but you find a way to blow it. Says a lot when Darren Waller basically doesn't want to play for you, and now he's over in Miami. And basically, a bit of a rejuvenation probably for him. I mean, basically, they replaced Jonnu Smith with him because they needed a tight end, obviously. I know they were looking at Michael Mayer in Las Vegas, but it turns out that they like him over there, especially Pete Carroll. So he's probably not going anywhere. So we're going to move on from this moving forward, and let's see what happens. But a solid pickup for the Miami Dolphins. I think at the end of the day, Darren Waller didn't want to play for Brian Daboll, who really does. We consider how he's mismanaged the last couple seasons after making the playoffs in 22. And you could probably say he's past his expiration date as a head coach there, but we know how Giants ownership is. And basically they're every bit the clown show the other New York team is, the Jets, because we know how it is. They love the attention. They love the media. That's how they like to be in New York. So that's how it is. And then to Pittsburgh, after the wild array of moves over the past week, it turns out that Omar Khan has a contract extension. Fine and dandy, but now you got to complete the deal with TJ Watt. I mean, everyone knows this situation there, especially my followers in Pittsburgh. I said on a show last week that I even though we know that how the free agency works, we see teams where players wear different team uniforms, and at times you don't even imagine. But I still hold on hope that there's no way possible I see TJ Watt wearing a uniform other than the black and gold in Pittsburgh, because I just think the guy's born to be a Steeler for life. Now, if they want to go ahead and do whatever and set the city of Pittsburgh on fire, have at it. But I don't expect that to happen. I think some form of a medium between the Steelers and the front office will get done. And we know the moves Omar Khan has made over the past couple of seasons. So he gets a contract extension. Good for him. He did something right. I mean, next season, I believe they have like 12 or 13 draft picks. So they have something going right there pretty much. And as a result, I think at the end of the day, he's going to probably put some kind of a competitive team together in Pittsburgh. Now, we know the story over there. They never had a losing season under Mike Tomlin, but that's basically run its course. Now, you got to have a winning season, get into the playoffs, and actually do something. I mean, at least make some kind of a run. I mean, 9-8, 10-7 seasons no longer cut it. I mean, we know that stat for the longest time. I mean, when is the next step going to be when they hold him accountable for not just having a winning record, but not being able to do more than have a winning record? Because 9-8 seasons at this point isn't going to cut it. I mean, the guy's phenomenal. The team's good enough to get their 9 to 10 wins, but are they good enough to do anything in the postseason? That's going to be the question. But we go back to Omar Khan. It was a heck of a signing, a good signing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, because we know how they are when it comes to stability. Sometimes they're a little too stable for their own good in some cases, but not in this. I thought it was solid for the Steelers to keep Omar Khan, and they're going to hopefully put something together here soon, because you got 12 draft picks in the 2026 NFL draft coming up. You should be able to build something with all those draft picks and cap space. Who knows what's going to happen this season? You took a couple flyers on a couple guys that I think may work out, but we'll find out. Good extension for Khan nonetheless. Good for him. Good for the organization. Now to another news that's going on here in Cincinnati, and I had to read this so I understood this correctly. You just agreed to this 10-year whatchamathingy going on so that you keep the team in the city till 2036. Now you want to extend the lease to July 31st. I thought you had a deal wrapped up. If you had a deal wrapped up, why in the world you have to extend it to July 31st? What is the deal with this? I mean, you know how stupid you look because you have to extend this 30 days? I mean, I know part of it is they want to out clause just in case they want to relocate, which is possible. But if you had a deal in place for you to keep the team over there until 2036, why do you need 30 extra days to negotiate? I mean, you would think after all of the back and forth that's going on, all of the accusations that went on between Cincinnati and Hamilton County, you would think the deal would be fully done by now and everyone could just breathe. It's like like the equivalent of trying to get to the finish line, and your body's simply breaking down after, running the Boston Marathon. I mean, that's what we have going on here, from both sides, not just the Bengals, from Hamilton County. I mean, Alicia Reese is one of the degrading idiots walking Cincinnati right now. Everybody in Hamilton County could tell you that. But that's what we have. And as a result, we're still in the mess, and it's not fully done. I mean, they say it's a mutual agreement. I know part of it is they want to scale back how much they want to pay for stadium upgrades, which at this point, they should just build a new stadium, because that stadium is the equivalent of defunct right now, because it's like the old stadiums you had back in the 80s and 90s. They haven't upgraded up to the times, simply because the ownership doesn't want to pony up their own dollars, and the fan base and the super fans want to act like the biggest group of cowards walking the streets of Cincinnati and on social media apps. And because of all of that, that's why we have the mess. It's like you're trying to sweep. You're trying to sweep a floor, but it's like you don't want to sweep the floor and get the job done immediately. It's like you want to take your sweet little time till you find every little spigot of dirt, and when you find that spigot of dirt, you don't want to sweep up that spigot of dirt. That's the Bengals organization right now, and the Bengals fans. Why? That's how they act. And as I was on the X platform earlier today, I should acknowledge there was a question asked, what 3 things do I want to see from the Bengals this season? Well, let me just start with this. Get this freaking stadium deal done, please, because the thing has become an absolute joke. That's number 1. Number 2, the fans, the super fans, the Bengals content creators, and the Cincinnati media need to shut up and start taking accountability for failures. And the third thing is, you better hope signing those 3 players, Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, to a combined $600 million from now to the end of the decade doesn't plummet worse than Enron did in the early 2000s. And we know what happened to Enron when their stocks plummeted. That could be worse than that. Demand results, demand accountability, hold yourselves accountable, and demand the results. Because if you're going to make a $600 million investment, you better have a great return on investment on it, because otherwise you're going to look worse than Enron did in the 2000s, and we know how bad Enron was. That's what Cincinnati is staring at this moment. First, it's a stadium deal. Then it's taking forever to get these player contracts done. Of course, there's still the limbo with Shamar Stewart and Trey Hendrickson, which I'll touch on whenever more news comes up. But that's the mess we're in, and they're plummeting faster than Enron did in the early 2000s. In the business field, everybody knows what happened with that, so we'll just leave it as it is. But I'll go ahead and deal with that when everything is closed. Don't know why they want to take their sweet little time closing the deal out. I guess the ownership wants an opt-out for relocations if they don't like what they get from Hamilton County. I don't know what the heck Hamilton County wants, but good luck with it. I mean, if you guys agreed to keep the team in 2036, you should have had this deal done. It was easy peasy. Some people call it the Joe Burrow effect, possibly. But what are you going to do in 2036? Because likely Joe Burrow's not going to be in a Cincinnati uniform after the decade is up. Good luck. Just get the deal done and handle your business, and let's get the season started already. And speaking of Joe Burrow, the show Quarterback is going to be coming on. Supposedly, I guess it kicks off tomorrow on Netflix with him, Jared Goff, and Kirk Cousins. Interesting stories all over the place. They had it last year with Mahomes, and I forgot who the others were, but it was a hit, and I expect this one to be a hit. Interested to see from a couple point of views. Well, let's see this from Kirk Cousins first. I mean, the guy came off an ACL tear, got the contract with Atlanta, but we know the Falcons drafted Michael Penix Jr., and it didn't sit well with Kirk Cousins. I want to see what he really thinks, and maybe that show can shed some light on what he really thought, because we know how much the Falcons mismanaged things left and right. I mean, talk about how the Michael Vick situation way back when, of course, way back when they drafted Brett Favre, and we know what happened there. And of course, it took place, I think, a decade ago with the fake crowd noise in the Georgia Dome over there, or whatever the dome is called. But the Atlanta Falcons, we know, mismanaged things, and we have it itch that it was not sitting well with Kirk Cousins. And in this series, I just want to see what he's thinking. I want to see just how the mindset is when all of this played out. I want to see the mindset of Jared Goff. We know what's written about him. People can say, is he going to win the big one? Was on his way to leading the Lions to the best record in the NFC. And we know what happened when he just fell off the map against the red-hot Washington Commanders, who just put him and that offense on lockdown, and the Washington offense just pounded that defense all over the place. Want to see the mindset of Jared Goff, because a lot of things have been said and written about him. I mean, he may have a successful season. Debate whether the guy can get the job done. Actually, I want to know what his mindset was after that game in Houston where he threw 5 interceptions, even though he won the game. I mean, was he just happy with the win, or was he just disappointed in himself because even though he got the win, he was just a turnover machine that day? I mean, 5 interceptions in the game, and even if he won, I wonder what he's thinking. Is he happy with just being content with the W, or was he looking to get better? I'm interested to see these quarterbacks' mindsets simply because it's a unique view. I watched it last year with Mahomes. I think the year before he was on there also. Don't hold me to it. But it's a nice series. Of course, Burrow's going to be on there. Want to see the mindset after the week 1 loss to the New England Patriots and that sideline argument that he had with Zach Taylor at that game in Tennessee, because we know that set ablaze in the Cincinnati media once it was caught on camera on the Fox station when Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow basically, I guess, had a disagreement. We'll find out what it is and why it is. Also want to see how he acted after losing week 1 to the New England Patriots and getting outplayed by Jacoby Brissett. And of course, the mindset of the polygamy that took place at week 18 when he had to sit home, was trying to root for the Kansas City Chiefs to get the Bengals in the playoffs when they didn't deserve it. Want to see the storyline with that one. Lots of storylines in the series. Quarterback with these 3. I mean, it was a good series the last 2 years. I expect it to be a big one this season. I'll be paying attention to it just like everybody else is. These NFL shows are becoming better and better each year, I'll tell you. I mean, interesting views, breakdowns, the mindsets, especially in the quarterback position. We know how that is. Going to be a good one, especially with these 3. And another one that's going to take place, I don't know when this is supposed to be. I don't remember, but let me back up here. Sorry for the camera review. As I talk about this, let's see, here we go. When we is one of the iconic figures in sports history, and we're going all the way back to the late 1800s to the early 1900s. Before we had iconic figures like Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, maybe around the time of Babe Ruth, even before that, even guys like Mickey Mantle, Jesse Owens, an outstanding track and field star, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the list goes on. There was a fella named Jim Thorpe. We talk about the standout Jim Thorpe. The guy spent time as an All-Pro in the NFL and was, of course, a gold medalist in both if I can pronounce this correctly, the pentathlon and the decathlon. And there's supposed to be a real strong, excellent documentary about his rise and what he went through. If you guys know the story, that the International Olympic Committee took away his gold medals because they knew he played baseball, and apparently some issues with it. But like many years after he passed away, the IFC realized the wrong, so they reversed the decision to reward him the medals. And in 2022, they recognized him as the sole winner of the pentathlon and decathlon in the 1912 Olympics in Stockholm, Sweden, basically rectifying the injustice that took place. I mean, before we see, even before what Muhammad Ali went through, and even before some of the other things some of the other athletes went through when it comes to many things, I can point to the Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson situations, among many others. Before all of that, it was Jim Thorpe. And Jim Thorpe just went through hell and high water, especially when you consider he was a multi-sport athlete and a real darn good one. winning the gold medals in the 1912 Olympics in Stockholm with the decathlon and the pentathlon, playing in other sports like football and baseball. And apparently, because of that situation, the injustice took place by the International Olympic Committee, which we know the IOC is filled with crooked schmucks as it is anyways. But this documentary, if you want to see what a real athlete had to go through during those times, and I mean, forget about what we know with guys like what Muhammad Ali or Shoeless Joe Jackson went through. That's one thing. What Jim Thorpe went through is a whole new category, and this documentary about Jim Thorpe is a must-watch. Because I'll be tuning in and I'll be talking about that also. Because we talk about iconic athletes, and we talk about the highest pedestal of all highest pedestals. Jim Thorpe is up there. I mean, we could talk about all these iconic athletes today, but maybe one of the original ones, one of the original celebrity athletes, star athletes, if you want to talk about it in that sense, was Jim Thorpe. And the documentary that's coming out, I highly recommend you watch it because I'll be tuning in. The dude was sensational at a very, very difficult time, and he had to go through a lot, many, many things. But the injustice was rectified in 1988 when they rewarded the medals that they were wrongfully taken from him in 1913. And of course, in 2022, they basically just rewrote the history books to correct the biggest, maybe one of the most erroneous things that taken place in Olympic history when he was now declared the official winner of the 1912 Stockholm Games in Stockholm, Sweden, when he was declared the real winner of both the decathlon and the pentathlon. Just an amazing all-around athlete. And this is before we coined phrases all-around athletes in today or in modern times. For that time, Jim Thorpe was an all-time modern. Let me back up here. Jim Thorpe was an all-time, all-around athlete who could play in any sport, who can compete in any sport, and he was just a thing of beauty. And given what he went through back in the early 1910s, especially with what happened with the Olympics, said a lot about what this guy was at the end of the day. The documentary is going to be a good one. And if I want to talk about iconic athletes, make sure you mention Jim Thorpe among them, because he's definitely in that conversation, especially what he went through in the 1910s. It's a must watch. It's just crazy stuff. Now to the world of boxing. And it was announced, I guess, the trilogy of Dmitri Bivol and Artur Beterviev now wants to go to Russia or whatever the frick they want to have it at. And I guess they want the Riyadh season. Al Sheikh says, have at it. Of course, there's this now weird accusation by the Beterviev camp that Bivol wants to drag this out. I don't know how true that is. I think that's just selling hyperbole more than anything else, because we know they wanted to fight for the longest time, Bivol and Beterviev, before they had the two fights. We know what happened there. One of the governing bodies said because Bivol is Russian, and we know what the story with that is, they wouldn't sanction the fight. But we know the third fight's going to happen. I mean, they talked about it in November, probably early 26 might be my guess. I mean, I know Beterviev wants it as soon as possible. I'm sure Bivol does. And I expect this to take place whenever. I mean, they had a good two-fight series, each splitting the first two. Well, I thought Bivol should have been credited with the first fight win. Second fight, I thought Bivol was the right winner, albeit by a pinch. But this one is winner take all. Let's see where this one goes. I'm looking forward to it. And for those of you who still think Dmitri Bivol is ducking David Benavidez, please get checked for CTE, because there's no ducking going on. I'll just leave that at that. And we talked about all-time great iconic athletes in the late 1910s and the early 1920s with Jim Thorpe. It was more than 109 years ago. It's been 106 years ago that took place in Toledo, Ohio. And we talk about iconic athletes and big splashes. Maybe none other than the Manasseh Mauler Jack Dempsey. And he finally hit the pinnacle when he just obliterated, beat down, and destroyed the standout Jess Williard effortlessly, floored him 7 times in the first round, en route to a 3-round beatdown, and to become the heavyweight champion of the world. before Mike Tyson, even before guys like George Foreman, Ernie Shavers, and Sonny Liston. When you talk about brutal punchers of that time, none was at that time was more brutal than Jack Dempsey. I mean, Jess Williard came off winning the title from Jack Johnson. And in this particular instance, before the fight, it was revealed that Jack Dempsey let go his manager, Doc Kearns, who was on Jess Williard's camp. And basically, in this particular fight with Jack Dempsey, looking at the moment to become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, he just comes out and just floors Jess Williard 7 times rather effortlessly in a hot heat, which superseded 100 degrees in an outdoor facility in Toledo, Ohio. And Jack Dempsey, just let me remind people of this back then. It's not like we have today where you score a knockdown and you go to a neutral corner. When Jack Dempsey floored Jess Williard, there's the instance where Williard was on the floor and Dempsey was ready to pounce on him, standing right next to him. Remember, back then, you don't get to stand in the neutral corner for the count. You were standing right there, ready to pounce on him, and that's what Jack Dempsey was looking to do. And we know what type of a brutal punisher Jack Dempsey was in the late 1910s and early 1920s. And he hit the pinnacle, his finest hour and his biggest splash when he just obliterated a standout Jess Williard in less than 3 rounds to win the undisputed heavyweight championship. It's just place in boxing history. Is one of the more brutal, pure brawlers, maybe one of the more brutal punchers, maybe in heavyweight history. When you consider some of the punchers that came through, he's up there with them. Doesn't get talked about enough, especially the way he just obliterated Williard. I mean, he obliterated him so bad. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories after the fight where they said Jess Williard's teeth was knocked out and his ribs were fractured, which was debunked by those close to the Williard situation. Said he had to go to the hospital, which never happened. And of course, the real conspiracy was the manager, Doc Kearns, who was once Jack Dempsey's manager, who is now in Jess Williard's corner for this fight, made the accusation that the gloves might have been loaded and the wraps would have been illegally wrapped. And there was a photo of after that fight in 1919 where Jack Dempsey puts his fist out and they were basically legal wraps, not illegal wraps, legal wraps. And Jack Dempsey basically had hands like this and a smile on his face. Turned out it was some kind of I don't want to say it's an accusation, but maybe just Doc Kearns not being able to accept the fact that Jack Dempsey just bum rushed Jess Williard effortlessly to where he had to accept it, to where he started making the accusation that it was happening. But that was debunked in a minute simply because of the bad separation between Doc Kearns and Jack Dempsey. It was like at that time, it was like a Mike Tyson, Kevin Rooney of that time, or like a Tommy Hearns, Emmanuel Stewart. I mean, you don't equate Stewart without talking. You don't talk about Tommy Hearns without Emmanuel Stewart. Back then, before they split, you didn't talk about Jack Dempsey without Doc Kearns. That's what happened 109 years ago today in Toledo, Ohio, when Jack Dempsey just made the splash in the Roaring 20s. And they called it the Roaring 20s for a reason. When he just came out, laid to waste effortlessly in one of the most brutal beatdowns, maybe in heavyweight championship boxing history. You could probably say in all of combat sports history, when he wasted the standout Jess Williard in 3 rounds to win the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. I mean, it's a sensational run. Ended, of course, with the 2 losses to Gene Tunney. We know what happened with the second fight with Tunney with the long count, but doesn't deter the fact Jack Dempsey is a top 10 all-time great heavyweight and a top 10 all-time hard-hitter, brutal punching brawler maybe ever. And you talk about one of the hardest skulls maybe in boxing history at that time, because that's what Jack Dempsey had. So when you talk about guys that made the biggest splash in heavyweight boxing history, before we had guys like Lennox Lewis, Evander Holyfield, Muhammad Ali, and even Joe Louis, it was Jack Dempsey. And he did it 107 years ago today in Toledo, Ohio. Laid to waste Jess Williard. And Jess Williard was no pushover. Jack Dempsey was driven to win the title, and he made the most of it. Didn't help the fact that the bad split Jack Dempsey had with Doc Kearns basically just added fuel to Dempsey's fire. What a historical moment. And I conclude with a more modern historical moment. This one was a big splash of a different kind. This took place 40 years ago today at the Riviera in Las Vegas. It was the first of the two fight series between Julio Cesar Chavez and Roger Mayweather. Story with this one. This was the U.S. TV debut for Chavez, who was big in the Mexico and the southwestern America, like Los Angeles and Los Angeles at the time. Made his debut in both Las Vegas and on American television. It was free TV, CBS Sports Sunday. Tim Ryan, Gil Clancy, and Sugar Ray Leonard calling the fight against the former champion Roger Mayweather, who was a year removed from getting flatlined by Rocky Lockridge in one round, and had a subsequent loss to Tony Baltazar in a fight where he was just effortless and just got outworked. Got a couple wins to put himself in this title shot position. And we have this on the free TV, CBS Sports Sunday. Tim Ryan, Gil Clancy, and Sugar Ray Leonard calling the fight. Story of this one here is in the second round, after a bit of an okay start by Mayweather, Chavez puts a pedal to the gas, floors him 4 times, gets a second round knockout, and basically the world is introduced to JC Superstar. Some elevated him to the category of the top fighters in the world pound for pound. Best part of this was who greeted him after the fight at the press conference. It was none other than the greatest pound for pound ever, Sugar Ray Robinson. And that should tell you what impact Julio Cesar Chavez made 40 years ago today when he just bum rushed effortlessly Roger Mayweather in less than 2 rounds. I mean, Mayweather made every excuse in the book. Well, of course, what do you expect? He's Roger Mayweather. He thinks he knows expletive about boxing when he doesn't. Basically, his excuses were basically the equivalent of saying, I got my butt handed to me, because that's what happened. Of course, the real highlight of this fight was the jump punch where Mayweather was running like the chicken that he is. Chavez landed the long right hand in the air and floored Mayweather, although Richard Steele refused to call it a knockdown. Replay showed it should have been, because it was a right hand right on the chin. And from that point forward, Chavez just turned it up, floored him 3 more times. Fight was over. Julio Cesar Chavez retains the super featherweight championship, and we begin the march to greatness with him. And America was introduced to a superstar. And we consider the Mexican superstars at that time, it was few and far between, because remember, 3 years before that, the world tragically lost probably the greatest to ever come out of the country in Salvador Sanchez. And they were looking for a superstar to put himself in the limelight. That's what Julio Cesar Chavez did. And what a way to do it than on free TV on American television. And that's what he did 40 years ago. Of course, this prompted a rematch 3.5 years later. Roles were reversed, where Mayweather was a champion and Chavez was a challenger. Took place at the Great Western Forum, where Chavez just dog-walked Mayweather from the 3rd round on, grit and grind, broke him down, beat him down, made him quit on the stool like the coward Roger Mayweather is. And that tells you where they can fight 10 times, you would get the same result. Julio Cesar Chavez was always going to be all wrong for Roger Mayweather. Mayweather had his time in the sun when he won the super featherweight title from Sammy Serrano till he got flatlined by Rocky Lockridge. Got this title shot after a couple suspect wins simply because he's Roger Mayweather. I mean, he got the stature of the #1 contender of that governing body. And Chavez, with his American television debut. And when he made that American television debut, he made the most of it. Why? Perfect opponent for him. Now, beating Roger Mayweather was, not an easy thing. I mean, even guys like Pernell Whitaker and Rafael Pineda could tell you that. I'm sure Julio would also. But when he came to the States, it was all over the American television for this particular fight. He made the most of it, and it was probably his biggest splash. The world was introduced to one of the all-time greats, carried on for the next 8 to 9 years after that, ascended to the best fighter in the world pound for pound. And of course, Roger Mayweather, after this fight, managed to win a 2nd world title, led to the rematch where he quit on the stool. But after he quit on the stool, after the rematch, never got to that point ever again. Fought twice more for the world title, obliterated by Rafael Pineda, went to Australia and lost to Costa Zoo, and that was pretty much it. But the world was the American television landscape was introduced at the free TV American landscape, was introduced to the iconic Julio Cesar Chavez 40 years ago today when he just obliterated, beat down, bum rush, and super punched Roger Mayweather in the second round, especially one of the punches where he was in the air and the right hand that just landed flush on the chin. And that was all she wrote. Kudos to Julio for that moment. And that will forever live as a part of his legacy. You can nitpick his legacy all you want. It doesn't matter. It's forever secure. Some people have give him all these distinctions: good, bad, pretty, ugly. Doesn't matter. It's still secure. Because when you think of the influx of Mexican fighters that came after him, I mean, Morales, Barrera, Marquez, and even Alvarez, for the longest time, the question was, who was going to be the next Julio Cesar Chavez? Maybe instead of them being the next Julio Cesar Chavez, they were probably the first of themselves. The only one that probably came close was Ricardo Lopez, the standout super flyweight from way back when, during that time. Actually, check that, not super flyweight, strawweight and light flyweight. And that was basically in the all-time great plethora of Mexican boxers. If you want to ask me my Mount Rushmore of Mexican boxers, there's 4 of them: Chavez, Sanchez, Ricardo Lopez, and Ruben Olivares. Juan Manuel Marquez and Canelo Alvarez, the only other honorable mentions I'll accept. But American television was introduced 40 years ago today, free TV, to Julio Cesar Chavez, who basically fought out of Mexico, other parts of the globe, and even mainly in the Weight Western Forum in Los Angeles. Made his Vegas and American television debut when he just beat down and obliterated Roger Mayweather in 2 rounds. You removed from Mayweather getting obliterated by Rocky Lockridge in 1 round. So anytime Roger Mayweather lost, it was by obliteration. We all know that. But doesn't deter the fact the road was introduced to a superstar. We've had a lot of splashes, foreign splashes, all the time, going back to when even guys like Kid Gavilan and Carlos Ortiz, and maybe the bigger one was when Roberto Duran ruled Madison Square Garden when he just beat down Ken Buchanan. So whenever you having a foreign splash like that, especially when with some of these guys, it's always going to open the eyes. It'll always be that way. That's what Chavez did 40 years ago. American TV wanted him. I mean, they were looking for the standout after the unfortunate tragedy of Salvador Sanchez. They found him. He made the most of it. Roger Mayweather was laid to waste in 2 rounds. That should tell you all about El Gran Campeón Mexicano. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I will be back tomorrow night. I do apologize for my camera interference here. Until then, have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the night, and God bless.